Sachs Asset Management, Mr. Jim O'Neill here. He was actually the person who gave the keynote address this morning on the centrality of education and learning to nation building and economic development. Thank you so much, Mr. O'Neill, for joining us on the program.
My pleasure.
Well, it was quite an interesting address you gave us this morning. And looking at Nigeria's population, we're about almost 170 million. And according to statistics, youths actually make up more than half of this number. So how can Nigeria actually use these assets? Because as far as most people are concerned, and economists as well, these are our assets, not the oil that we have or the agriculture that we've been touting about. So how can we use these assets to increase and improve productivity here in Nigeria?
It's rather good to hear you saying that because sometimes I worry that too many people focus on Nigeria's oil wealth. In fact, over the next few decades, whether Nigeria will achieve its hopes and potential are going to depend on the young people. So having an event like this, 3 days, economic summit devoted to education, is really quite impressive. I was particularly impressed that at the end of it, rather than just thanking everybody, there were specific things announced that had resulted from the 3 days discussion. So trying to empower those young people is vital, and if it can be done at all successfully, Nigeria's got a really exciting future.
Well, you know that even though most of the delegates here, even the speakers at the various sessions actually talked about private sector collaboration with the government, as well as having civil organizations as well partner with the government, it's not always really about funding. There are other challenges that need to be addressed. For instance, we have big corporate organizations here in Nigeria that actually give funds to tertiary institutions to help them, but we don't see so much of them including helping to build them technically or giving them skills through their corporate social responsibility. So should most companies begin to look at that as a way of giving their own quota back to society or the communities that they are in?
Well, let me say a couple of things. First of all, Nigeria isn't the only place in the world that's got challenges with its education and the role of all parts of the community. And it's the same issues on different degrees exist everywhere. Second thing I would say, however, I do think there's an obligation on international companies and big domestic companies to not only give something back, but what I'd call enlightened self-interest, to help you and your company's future have the right talented people. You've got to give the young people the skills to do it, whether it be primary, secondary, tertiary, or even early years, as we've discussed here. All of those things are important, and I do think it's incumbent of the corporate sector to play its own contribution. It seems pretty clear to me that it's in their own interests.
Mr. O'Neill, just before I let you go, we also talked about, part of what you talked about during your keynote address was about the BRICS and the MINS.
Yeah.
Could you talk to us more about what the MINS is all about?
Well, the BRICS have got all the headlines, of course, partly because of the acronym I created 13 years ago, and I think those 4 emerging economies are likely to be the biggest in the world in the next 20 to 30 years. The MINTs are the 4 that I would consider of all the others from the emerging world that would be next. So Mexico, Indonesia, Turkey, and of course Nigeria would be part of that group. And I showed some numbers here today that if Nigeria can do things to boost its productivity based around educational initiatives, but other things as well, by 2050 it could be way beyond the 20th economy of the world. It could be the 15th. So focusing on some of the things that have been said today will certainly ensure that Nigeria's place as a mint is firmly established.
Mr. O'Neill, thank you so much for speaking with us this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, I've been speaking to the former chairman of Goldman Sachs Asset Management, Mr. Jim O'Neill, and it's been quite insightful. As we all already know, during his keynote address, he actually made mention of the fact that an economy can only grow if they focus on 2 things, and that's the labor force and its productivity.